Welcome to another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. This episode, we have the Vincy Moms back for the second roundtable. Welcome, Vincy Moms.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Happy to be here.
Good
All right.
morning.
All right. All right. So today we want to have a conversation around parenting and career alignment when it comes to our kids, right? So I'm going to set the context up a little bit. Um, I think growing up in our generation, we were told to go to school, do well in school, so that you'll get a good job to be financially independent eventually, right? So I wanted to have a conversation with you ladies around how have you been intentional about parenting your child through the school system, specifically in America, to kind of, you know, um, take the next step from what we were told as kids growing up, right? Like, and so what I mean by that is within the American education system, there are different tracks, right? There's like a remedial track, there's a regular track, there's an AP track, there's an honors track, there's an IB track. There are all these tracks within the school system that you have to, especially if you didn't grow up in this system, that you have to come and kind of get up to speed on, right? So how do you help to navigate your child, with all the nuance that's involved to make sure that they are prepared, especially if they're going to college, um, to hit the ground running when they get to college. So I know it's pretty broad. We'll refine it a little bit, but what have you been intentional about? And we'll start with you, Corinne, to really guide your kids, prepare them, expose them, and get them ready to go to college so that ultimately they have a career that allows them to be financially independent.
Good morning. To say that I may have been intentional about it would not be accurate. I would
Hmm.
have found out about the tracks just as we entered into them, with the first one being the guinea pig going into high school. In her case, there was a program where they were able to earn their associates simultaneously with their high school diploma, and I encouraged that for her, with the express understanding that it would reduce college costs because it would reduce the amount of time spent in college. So I think that was my focus there. The second one did not want to do that. She wanted to experience high school as a high schooler. So
Hmm.
she did quite a few honors classes. So she may have taken an honors track, so to speak, even if it was not called that in that specific environment. And the last one, as you know, did AP, just like your daughter,
Hmm.
right? Um, in terms of the intentional, in terms of what was intentional, I always encourage them to make sure that they had the minimum amount of cost, minimum amount of debt coming out of college, minimum amount of cost to attend.
Hmm.
So whatever track helped you with that, yes. If college is your intention, if college is your purpose, then make sure when you come out of college, you're not worse off for the way, worse coming out than going in financially. It doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So that may have been my intention from the jump.
So for my daughter, my daughter went to a charter middle school and high school.
Hmm.
And I mentioned this in the first roundtable, and they
Hmm.
were very well prepared. Like Corinne, I wasn't quite intentional because I didn't quite understand the system.
Hmm.
And most of what I learned on the fly through my daughter.
Mhm.
So she was on both honors and AP track.
Hmm.
She did all AP courses. It got to, I think by the time she was in 11th grade, when it was time to select classes, the only courses that were available to her were AP courses because her scores were always so high that they'd never put her in a regular class. So she had no choice but to do the AP courses. What I did encourage her to do, also like Corinne, was to ensure that whatever you do, make sure it is setting you up so you don't have debt coming out of college either.
Hmm.
And luckily, she did very well. She goes to a private university um, and got really good scholarships. Like she got, I'll say maybe like 95% of her um, tuition covered. So we are coming out of pocket for very little, which will ensure that she doesn't have any loans coming out of college.
All right. So, as you know, I am still in the trenches. My
Right.
daughter is a sophomore in high school. So, a lot of I think of what I did, similar to the other ladies on the panel, I really didn't have any understanding of the different tracks that were available, what that means. Um, our education in St. Vincent really was there was no the quote unquote what would be called an honest track in St. Vincent probably would be where if you were really smart, they would put you into the sciences. I think that's what we would equate to the honors track
Mm-hmm.
in America. So I really didn't have an understanding of what that entails. So when my daughter, she was a pretty solid student in middle school, um, all around. There was no one area that was like outstanding for her there. So we didn't really have a thought of, well, maybe she should be tracked for this, that, or the other. When she got to high school, she was placed based on her grades and her HSPT because she goes to a private Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
So she took the HSPT, and based on that and her grades in her eighth grade year, she was placed into the honors program at her high school,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, my understanding of the program at the time, I thought that you got placed in an honors program because of your grades. But then when she got to the high school, I realized that anybody at this particular high school could literally take honors classes. It was not
Mm-hmm.
only for kids who had a certain grade level, certain grades in their classes. So I think initially we thought that she had to do all honors classes. Found out just in the middle of her sophomore year that she didn't necessarily have to do that. She could pick and choose how many. She didn't have to carry a specific load, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've had conversations about taking AP classes and whether, that is something that she needs to do based on what she wants to do in college. I had the privilege of having Derek conduct a session with her to try to get an understanding of, kind of things that she probably would be more aligned to, kind of subjects that she'd probably be more aligned to. And I'm seeing that actually manifesting right now. So in my mind, I didn't have an understanding of the tracks. We're just working our way through, kind of feeling our way through based on recommendations from the other ladies in the panel here and just reading up on stuff, listening to my daughter so that we could understand what those tracks would mean. I think my biggest thing with this is what I've told her is look at the areas that you have a natural alignment to. So if
Mm-hmm.
that's you're not as strong in math or any of that math or a science subject, don't worry about that. You focus on the areas that you are stronger in and look for the AP classes or the advanced classes in those areas. So I think that's how I'm tracking right now. College is not very far away. I mean, we have to start thinking about that now. Should have probably
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about that from way back. But I think I would probably have a similar mindset as the other ladies and
Mm-hmm.
look for ways to make sure that we reduce the cost of
Mhm.
college attendance so that she comes out without any debt.
As all three of you were commenting, it made me think of something. So we actually have a lot of diversity, right? We have diversity in terms of the diversity within education in America, right? Represented by the panel, right? So Corinne, your kids went to public high school. Kaylon, your daughter went to a charter
Charter.
school,
Yeah.
charter middle, and then Michelle, your kid goes to a private Catholic school. And I think part of this conversation, right, is to kind of peel the onion back a little bit and show folks, especially
Mm-hmm.
folks who may not know, right? Because there's a steep learning curve as an immigrant when you come here. So I'll start with you, Michelle. So for your daughter going into high school, like there was a specific exam that she had to take, right? And
Right.
for Corinne and I, our kids had to also take an exam to go into what would be considered like an academic high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is knowing when you're in middle school or even in elementary school, knowing that, hey, if my child is going to go to a school, a high school that requires an entrance exam, is that you have to
Mm-hmm.
start preparing for that exam early, right?
Right.
And when you spoke about the HSPT, which is what kids take to go into the private Catholic schools, a lot of these schools also offer scholarships, right? So it's important for
Right.
parents to know, okay, based on your child's middle school grades and based on how
Mhm.
well they do on this exam, you have to know what those numbers are, right? Like what is the GPA
Right.
that's required and what is the HSPT score that's required for your
Mhm.
child to qualify for a merit scholarship, which is a
Yes.
scholarship usually that the school will give. It may not cover all the tuition, but it'll help to
Hmm.
take away some of it, right? So
Right.
I'm getting to my next question, and my next question for you guys is more so around how did you deal with number one, because the the way that all three of you have parented is very different from the way that it's not very different, but I have a different experience because I came here at 10 years old, right? So I kind of knew
Mhm.
the system from my own experience. So I had that advantage of having gone through the system, especially high school in America, right? Um, but how did you deal with there's this dichotomy between resources, right? So whether we're talking about private school, whether we're talking about a charter school, or whether you're talking about academic public high school, right? When you're parenting, there's this thing between resources, having the resources, right, to kind of
Mhm.
give your child the support, the leg up that they need, the advantage that they, can potentially exploit. But then there's also this side over here about resourcefulness, which is what the part that I want to lean on more, right? And the resourcefulness piece is understanding what's ahead and just
Mhm.
preparing early, right?
Mhm.
So that's the next piece that I want to go into. And what I meant by that was my example with the HSPT, even with the test, there's some charter schools that, may require, a test also. But I know in the public schools on the academic side, for the academic public schools, there's usually a test, right, that you have to take. And then that lets you know if you get in there or not. But on the resourceful side, and I'm getting to my point, what are some things that you guys learned along the way in terms
Mhm.
of um, how to, solve these, the problem or make it easier for your child going forward? And Corinne, I think we could
Mhm.
start with you again because you had three stabs at this, right? So with the first child, it was like you were learning on the fly. With the second one, you kind of like, okay, we can make the adjustment. With the third one, you can make further adjustments. But in terms of resourcefulness, right? Things that you did that were kind of outside of the box. Um, like what are some of those things that you found to be beneficial in terms of backtracking? I'll give you a perfect example. Like, if your kid is going into college, we know the steps that you have to take to get them into the high school. So then you can kind of start to prepare them. Then the next step is going into college. So what sort of resourcefulness have you found to be very helpful in helping you to prepare them for each next big step that they have to take?
Okay, so I'll start from when we were in Florida, because
Mm-hmm.
when we were in Florida, which is when my oldest was in middle school, had just started middle school, and the intention was to move back to Washington, D.C. Now, I remember from her search for her own middle school, which
Mm-hmm.
she had the freedom to do. She was interested in doing natural sciences, and she did go to a natural sciences tract middle school, which was a public
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we decided that we wanted to move back up north, well, you know, relatively speaking,
Mm-hmm.
um, I at that time would have had to research the middle schools, and we landed on a public charter school for middle school,
Mm-hmm.
which is where she ended up in middle school. And I think that laid the foundation. And that required a lot of research online, looking at scores, looking at what the school offered. It was a STEM school, or it purported itself to be a STEM school. It really was. And there were different opportunities to learn about coding, robotics, different sorts of
Mhm.
things. May not have been actual natural science, but it was the closest that we could have found to natural science for what was, in the scheme of things, a relatively good school.
Mm-hmm.
So she went there, and there were multiple opportunities to explore different facets of science.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, she was able to know, while we were there, we were able to learn about the different high schools and what they had to offer. And we maneuvered ourselves in a position to where she's able to now access these high schools. I mean, she has always had the grades, but it also is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that you know that you can be this and you could do this and you could get there as well, but you just have to
Mm-hmm.
do certain things to get there. You have to study for your test. You have to understand what's on the test. So I myself did not know what was on the test, but she had a very good tutor at
Mm-hmm.
school
Mm-hmm.
who helped her study for this test.
Mm-hmm.
And she got in there. Same thing with the middle one. Middle one ended up at the same middle school 1 year later, went through the process and went to the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, she's the only person who got into the high school from the middle school that year.
Mm-hmm.
The little one, as you know, tried to help her study. We tried to figure out what, at least not me, because I don't know what's on the test. But the oldest one tried to advise her. You remember those days, Derek? Her and Zora about
Mm-hmm.
what was on the test. But I don't know if the communication was off. I don't know but it didn't work out that way for them. It worked out a different way. It worked out how it was supposed to work out. But they did a
Yeah.
different test. But I don't think they had the same level of guidance that the first two would have had
Mm-hmm.
in terms of taking the test.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, they got into pretty good schools as well, as you know, doing they had to be astute about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to know that this is where they wanted to go um because I'm gonna give you another example. When I first moved back to the district, I thought that there was another school that I wanted them to go to. I had visited the school, another high school. I
Mm-hmm.
visited the school. I was in awe of the things that that school did. Then I later found out that that school tends to have students fighting every afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
But I was gung ho on those girls going there. And it was one of the teachers at the same middle school who was able to advise us, well, no, this is not where you want them to go because it's a dangerous environment, pretty much. As
Mm-hmm.
beautiful as the school looks and as many programs as they might offer, emotionally, it's not the right place. It's not going to set
Right.
them up for the future.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
now, in terms of going on to college, it was a similar situation. So I was like, you know what? I can only go from what I know.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you that I know the system. I still can't probably tell you that I can understand the system as you would, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that in terms of going to college, picking what you want to do. Um, if one of them had said, I want to do art, I have no issue with that. But tell me what you're gonna do with the art.
Mm-hmm.
How are you gonna eat?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're gonna do art in a way that feeds you. Do
Mm-hmm.
art in a way that fulfills you. Because you cannot do art and be hungry and be struggling because you're still gonna have your debts, or you're still gonna have to pay rent, still gonna have to pay a
Mm-hmm.
mortgage with art. What aspect of art are you gonna do? So I used to encourage them to fine tune what it is they wanted to do
Mhm.
to
Mm-hmm.
something that has longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my resourcefulness could come in,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Now, I love that because you touched on a couple of things, right? You touched on the research that you did. And I think it's
mm,
taking those steps, is just the action, right? Taking the action and also
mhm,
visiting the schools, right? So these are things that are
yeah,
really important because a lot of times, especially for immigrant families, you come, you're working, you got one foot here, you got one foot back home. So you're kind of split, you know what I mean, and how you're doing things. So I think it's really important to not be overwhelmed by this idea of, okay, it's going to cost this, it's going to cost this. And sometimes the cost is the time, right? But more so the
mhm,
resourcefulness. And don't look at the cost so much. It's more so the investment that you have to make. And sometimes the
Right.
investment is just in the
mm,
time. And if you put the time in to do the research, talk to the teachers like you did, you got a teacher to help tutor, go and visit the schools. You thought it was one thing, but then you also spoke to someone who said, "Hey, this may not be a good fit." Like you have to really like reach out to people and engage and get some
mhm.
feedback, you know?
Mhm.
So, Kaylon, how in terms of resourcefulness, what are some things that you've done to navigate this journey?
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit to
Hmm.
when my daughter was in, I'll say probably second or third grade. She has
Hmm.
always had a knack. She's always had an affinity to the sciences. She's been a STEM student for as long as I can remember. And I
Hmm.
remember one summer there was a 1 week program at a college in New Jersey where they did a sleepaway camp, STEM camp for the week.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she totally enjoyed that. And I think that kind of set set her up to let her like it kind of cemented the deal like, yes, this is what I want to do. Um, Fast forward now, she's in college. She's a computer science and math major,
Mm-hmm.
with a minor in data science. So it's totally STEM, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of resources, she went from the middle school that, like at the middle school that she went to, it led straight into the same. So it's the same umbrella, the same charter
Mm-hmm.
school system. She did take a test, a specialized test, and she didn't want to go to any of the specialized schools. Once we went to the open house, she didn't like it. I myself wasn't too fond of what I heard either, and we decided to stay in the charter school system. I kind of like the way that the charter school prepared them. So
Mm-hmm.
once again, I mentioned this before, I was kind of hands off because to be honest, my daughter herself is very resourceful, and the
Mm-hmm.
school itself really did set them up. They had their college ready courses that helped them with navigating um, the curriculum, so to speak, and what helped them in preparing for when they do get to college.
Mm-hmm.
So she did a lot of research herself. She would come to me and we'll sit down and go over everything, make sure that this is ideal for her. The teachers were very, very instrumental as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know she had this college counselor that she really liked, Mr. Perez, who was really instrumental
Mm-hmm.
in her in setting her up for success, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward now, she's in college. Like I said, she's a comp sci major
Mm-hmm.
and math, quite unlike her mom,
Yeah.
and she really likes it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I was adamant about, however, was that she would choose an area that she can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to lock yourself into a box
Mm-hmm.
because, like for example, if you were to study history, where are we gonna go with that? Are you gonna go work at a museum? Are you gonna become a high school teacher or a history teacher?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
when you're studying an area like business, you can cross industries with that.
Mm-hmm.
Come sci and math, you're opening up more doors. So my thing to her was my main advice to her: make sure when you choose an area of study, it's something that you can get a job easily, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
number two, you can go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that and I do think that she has set herself up. Also, what she has done, my daughter is one of those kids who just can't sit still, right? So she also joined, I don't know if you're familiar with the ROTC programs that they have on colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So she joined the ROTC program, which it's the Army branch of
Mm-hmm.
the military. And that also is helping to set her up in the future
Mm-hmm.
because now when she's done with college, anything post college that she wants to do, she's going to do it through the military, who will
Mm-hmm.
then pay for her education. She will just have to pay them back with whatever, how many amount of years that
Mm-hmm.
that they sent her to school. So
Yeah.
she has it all figured out. I really
Mm-hmm.
can't take credit for any of this, but I really think that she's on the right track.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think for you, when you talked about the resourcefulness of your daughter, I think also that is only possible if you are supportive as a parent, right? I had a one of my friends I interviewed earlier. He talked about when he was in, I think, elementary school. He brought home
Mhm.
like a gifted and talented application, and his mom, who's from the Caribbean, was like, "No, no, 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 we don't, I don't trust this, right?" So, and he was like, "No, mom, this is a good idea. I think we should really try this." But she was like, "No, no, no, I don't trust this." But I think this is a good iteration in terms of parenting styles, right? Like being open to kind of you give your child, you trust your child to kind of make decisions. And in your
Yeah.
situation with your daughter, where she went to the STEM camp on a college campus,
Hmm.
and it helped to solidify, her love for STEM, which is kind of what she stuck with that, right? But had you
Yeah.
not been supportive of allowing her to go, because again, a lot of times parents are, we're overprotective sometimes. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want my child to go to a sleepaway camp. I don't
Yeah.
want my,
She's
you know what I
only
mean?
7 years old. I don't want her
Yeah,
to go. No, I'm the
yeah,
total opposite. I gave her the wings and I just let her
yeah,
fly. You
Yeah.
fly. I want you because my thing ultimately, I'm not going to live vicariously through you. I've done
Mm-hmm.
my part. I also
Mm-hmm.
have my education and I'm big on education, like
Yeah.
big on education. So
Yeah.
for me to block her from doing something that she loves, it's setting her for failure. So
Yeah.
there was no way I was going to stop her from doing any of this as long as I know that she was not in harm's way.
Yeah, and it's also a huge confidence builder. You know what I mean? So by her
Yes.
going on a college campus at that young of an age, it kind
Mm-hmm.
of it demystifies college, right? It's not
Mhm,
college isn't this thing that's intimidating. She's like, yeah,
Right.
I did this already. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah.
It's not something. I think that's it's important also because sometimes parents may not have had those opportunities, right? You may have
Mhm,
parents who've not gone to college, and college just seems like this this weird thing
mhm.
that they're not really
Mm-hmm.
sure. It could be a little intimidating. They're not really sure how to
Right.
navigate it. So I think it was good in that sense to help. So Michelle, in terms of
Yeah.
resourcefulness, we just heard about the school. We heard about, Corinne talking to the teachers, going on the
Mhm.
visit.
Yep.
Elon talked about, opening up the experience to go away to the summer camp for STEM.
Mhm,
What are some ways that you have tried and you're still trying to be
mhm.
resourceful to help your child navigate the education system?
Yeah. So initially, when my daughter was maybe about 7 or 8 years old, maybe 7, I enrolled her in a free coding camp, and I forget what it
Hmm.
is. It's not girls who code, but it's something
That
along
girls
that
code.
line. I
Hmm.
don't know if it was. I can't remember if it was exactly that, but it was
Hmm.
offered through Montgomery County,
Hmm.
and it was the at a library. So she would go every Saturday, and I was like, let me expose her to this side. I'm gonna give her, these tools to see exactly where she's kind of looking, where she
Hmm.
has that affinity.
Right.
And she went for a couple Saturdays. She kind of enjoyed it, but I kind of felt that she wasn't. She knew she learned what they were doing, what they were teaching, but I didn't get the sense that this was really something that she was into. So I was like, okay, maybe we need to pivot in another direction. So, and I
Hmm.
think I mentioned this on the prior podcast, I exposed her to music. Like I had her sign up for music classes. She did dance, she did jujitsu. So, I gave her the opportunity to try a bunch of different things. As far as the academics are concerned, and talking about the HSPT test that she had to do to get into Catholic high school. So my plan was always to have her go to Catholic elementary, primary education,
Hmm.
and then to a Catholic high school.
Hmm.
Um, just based on the area that I live in and what I felt was best for her at that time. So when it came to the HSPT, a lot of parents at this school, I think the school that she went to didn't do a great job of letting parents know about free resources that they could take advantage of for their kids to
Hmm.
get practice to set themselves up for success for the HSPT.
Hmm.
So I am a researcher.
Hmm.
So I dig and I look and I get information, I Google stuff, I ask people, I did all these different things. And I found that there was a free HSPT class that was
Hmm.
being offered online. Um, I forget who it was being offered through, but there were other classes that people had to pay for, but this one was a free resource. The only
Hmm.
difference with this one, it wasn't one-on-one, but you had to it was like a group session online. I
Hmm.
was fine with that. So I signed her up for that and she did that for about 6 weeks prior to the
Wow.
HSP, right? So by the time we got to doing the HSPT, she was already familiar with what the exam would look like and she was
Hmm.
confident about it and she got an excellent grade on the HSPT.
Yeah.
Now that we're in high school, and I'll fast forward a little bit to talk about my opinions really on the resources that I think are available at this Catholic high school that costs quite a bit of money to send my daughter to. In my
Hmm.
opinion, I really don't see them providing the students with enough resources
Hmm.
now, even in their sophomore year, so that they can start building their plan for what they want to do for college, how they're going to get into these colleges. In my
Hmm.
opinion, I think that needs to start from your freshman year, right? Those are conversations that they should be having. The counseling office should be having those conversations from your
Mm-hmm.
freshman year because you can't
Mm-hmm.
wait until you get to be a junior to start giving them the resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the areas really that I'm a little bit disappointed in what they're doing right now, and that's something that I'm going to challenge them on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I go in to have meetings at the school, I'm going to challenge
Right.
them on that because I think that they're waiting until the junior year to
Mm-hmm.
start engaging with the kids about college. So
Mm-hmm.
resources that I have provided, I'm a Howard University grad. We live in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So any chance I have to get my daughter on campus, we go to campus. I talk about college all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we go onto the college campus and we sit and we hang around on the yard and we see what college life kind of looks like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
We're not very far from the University of Maryland, so we've been on that campus before. She's done like a summer program on that campus. So
Nice.
she's well exposed. We had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to go down to North Carolina recently, and had the opportunity to visit a couple of college campuses down there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you expose them to this type of environment, so it's not something that is big and scary to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of the other resources that I have provided ongoing would be things like for areas that I think that she's not as strong in. Um, you know, I provide her with tutoring, and I know a lot of people might be able, some people might not be able to add that as an extra expense for their kids,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a lot of free resources that you can
Mm-hmm.
use.
Yep.
You just have to kind of research and find it
Yeah.
because the information is there, the opportunities are there to help your kids, but you have to actually, if your child is not as proactive at finding it, sometimes you have to go out and get it for them, right? If the
Yeah.
school is not set up in a way where they have the resources and the kids are empowered enough to go and find the resources at the school, then you have to kind of set them up for success by finding the information outside.
For them. Yeah.
There is a lot of resources available out there. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be something that's paid. There are a lot of free resources that can be used for your child. You just have to go out and find it. You know,
Mm.
Yeah.
speak to other parents, speak to trusted teachers in the school. Because I mean, teachers are great, and I love my teachers. Shout out
Yeah.
to the teacher on the call. I love my teachers, but you know, not every teacher is going to be an advocate for your child. There's some
Mm-hmm.
that are going to be, but there's, you know, some that are just not. My daughter has a particular teacher at her high school who is a first generation American. So her parents, this teacher's parents are Jamaican. So when I went into the school to do the, you know, meet the teachers or whatever, and she realized I was from the Caribbean, she's like, "Oh, who is your daughter?" And she's like, "Okay." And ever since then, it's almost like she has adopted her,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we had, and you know, my daughter was having a little bit of challenge with her executive functioning skills, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
time management and all of these different things. I had a conversation with this teacher, and this particular teacher took it out of her personal time
Mm-hmm.
to sit with her to develop a schedule and
Mm-hmm.
still tries to keep her on track, like, you know, check in with her throughout the day to try to keep her on track with her time
Yeah.
management skills. Because she's like, don't worry, I have time management problems too, so I'll work with her, right? So you have advocates here and there who would help your child along the way as well. Those are the types of resources, relationship building here and there.
Mhm.
Build yourself a village. Those resources would come into play to help your children as well.
No, I agree, and I think the piece that you just said about the village, I think that's important. It's important for the child, but it's also
Mhm.
important for the parents, right? So the parents have to find the network in terms
Yeah.
of the people in the school who are gonna be supportive, right? The friends and family members outside of the school who've experienced or are experiencing something similar to kind of, have conversations where you can kind of counterbalance what's going on in your head with, the best strategies to support your child. I think this is crucial, crucial, crucial. So here's the last piece. I'm gonna wrap this up. What are some cultural habits that you are intentional about instilling in your child, all right? Since you guys still grew up in St. Vincent, stuff was done a certain way. You come to America, you're raising your kids, you're trying to be flexible. But what are those things from back home that you're like, listen, this is a non-negotiable. This is what we're doing. We're doing it like this. What are some of those things? And anybody could start off.
I'm gonna jump in. Manners,
Manners, yes.
Manners make it a
manners,
Yeah.
man.
manners. I know. Manners and behavior take you for the world.
To the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Manners. That's it's a non-negotiable for me. Um, Respecting your elders
Mm-hmm.
or people in authority.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain degree, however, because a lot of people like to take that out of context and feel that because
Yeah.
I'm the teacher, you can't, and because no. We're
Yeah.
not doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Respect is a two-way street and it's earned.
Yeah.
So if you're going to speak to me in a respectful manner, I will reciprocate. But do not think that you're going to speak down to me and think that I'm just going to sit there and let you do it. And I've instilled this in my daughter from day one. And I said
Nice.
this in the previous podcast. Advocate for yourself, be firm, but don't be rude.
Mhm.
Mm.
So these for me are the things that are non-negotiable. Advocating for yourself, manners, and respect. And be kind. Be
I love
kind.
it.
You never know who's having a bad day. Just be kind to people.
Yeah, I agree with the manners. I can't handle, even when I'm teaching, I can't handle no manners. I can't do it. It
Yeah.
doesn't end well. Another thing that I'm intentional about is making sure that whatever you do in life, you don't have to be stretching your hand out to anybody for a paycheck. If you want to show, but long run, make sure you are able to work for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Whatever it is, make sure at some point, whether now or later, whether it's in consultancy, practice, whatever it is, make
Mhm.
sure at some point you have the ability to draw your own pay for yourself. You're not
Mm-hmm.
having to ask a corporation to pay you. I mean, at some point, somebody's going to be paying you. But
Right.
how about you set yourself up in a way where you are, and a lot of us have an entrepreneurial spirit and don't realize it.
Mhm. You
Absolutely.
don't tap into
Because
it.
Is it that
I
we
can
don't
say
right? Is it that we don't realize it or we are scared to tap into it?
your
We're scared
parents
that we
did.
will
Mm.
fail.
You
We're
realize our
scared that
parents did.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Children,
scared
I
that
know
we will
your mom used to
fail.
sell
Yeah,
like
my
little sweets and stuff that she made. That's
exactly. Yes.
entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
My
Exactly. And she
grandmother
did very
used
well.
precisely. My
Yeah.
grandmother used to do that after she retired. That was her job. She was a caterer. And
Mhm.
she had a thing she used to say, which is whether I say it overtly or not, you are better than many, no worse than any. You
Hmm.
live your life. Not that you're
Mhm.
better than people, you're better in a better
Right.
position than
Mhm.
many
Mm-hmm.
people, you know. Live your life that way and do not that is a major thing for me. Do not have your hand stretched out to nobody, begging them
Mhm.
for anything. Make sure
Yes.
you can handle your business. So that
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
is my
Hmm.
cultural thing. That are the manners.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Well, for me, I, same thing with the manners, but one of the things that I always told my daughter, no skylarking and no gallivanting. You get into the classroom, do not be the one to be out there that the teacher have to keep talking to all the time, right? Do not
Hmm.
be the one.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're behaving yourself properly because you're a representation of not only yourself, but of your family. When you go to school, present yourself as such, as a respectful person, somebody who have brought up, see, you didn't get dragged up, right?
As Mrs. Sylvia Jack will say, conduct yourself as a young lady.
Conduct yourself like a young lady, right? These kind of things matter. They might not matter to everyone, but it
Right.
matters to me and it should matter to you. Doesn't matter what people say, oh, nobody can tell you how to live your life. All well and good, but still you have to represent yourself in a certain way.
I said that was the last question. It's not the last question. This is the last question.
It's a bonus round.
It's a bonus round. So
Amen.
here's the question. What are some areas in parenting in America specifically that you've gotten wrong and how did you fix those mistakes? Like what have you gotten
Hmm.
wrong as a parent and how did you fix it? And I think especially for everyone except Michelle who has more than one child, like you could say, okay, this I did this with this one, and then I had to adjust here. So give us some examples of some things that you got it wrong, but you were humble enough to say, you know what, I can do better. I can fix this.
Rigid Caribbean thinking. Um,
I love
expecting
that.
that, yeah, expecting that things are supposed to go a certain way, not understanding that there could be a curve to reaching back to the destination, that the
Mm,
point doesn't have a straight line. the destination doesn't have a straight line to arrive. Um, I mean, one of the things I knew is that I had to parent the three of them differently, but I didn't necessarily understand that just because it was different meant it was correct.
Mm.
And so there are certain instances where I was too rigid, and it may have caused, a little rift, not a little, sometimes a big rift.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they step away from the goal, and then you have to apologize. You have to come to you, put your big girl pants on, apologize, try to make it better. Another thing is accepting simple things like therapy from a family standpoint in order to parent better. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
So for me, my real shot at motherhood was with my daughter.
Mm.
That's when I was a mother. I was a teenage mom, but my mom was the one who was there, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't experience, and then I left home when the boys were very young. So I never had that experience. So when I had my daughter 15 years later, for me, I poured everything into her.
Mm-hmm.
And motherhood for me with her was what I envisioned it to be.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It really and truly was like when I tell you I poured everything into this little girl, like she was a girl that I wanted, first of all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I just poured everything into her. I can't say that I was perfect. I think I did a really good job raising her. I mean, she is and I know you guys hear me talk about this, and you're probably like, you think your daughter's a mess. I honestly, I tell people if you're looking for a poster child for what the almost perfect daughter were to be, I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely gonna say my daughter's picture will be there. And I'm sure a lot of parents feel this way, but this is how I feel about my daughter. Like she
Mhm.
is the most amazing kid that I've ever met, not because she's mine. I mean, I have some competition over here as
Yeah.
well from my nieces in the
Right.
village. But yeah, but yeah, because these girls are also
Yeah.
we're all it's almost like we have this thing, but I think I did a really good job
Mhm.
parenting my daughter. So I cannot compare. But I did everything that I could. I poured everything into her. And I think that I'm now reaping the benefits I'm seeing. We have a great relationship. We speak every day, even though she's not here. When
Mm-hmm.
she's home, I'm looking forward to her. I'm like, she's coming home next month, and I can't wait for her to be here. And when she's here, we sit around and we talk, So for me, it's just, I don't know. I mean, you
Mhm.
can tell from my,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
just like, yeah, like that's my baby there.
That's how it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, well, what I would say that I think I've done differently is allowing my daughter to have an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I come from a family of arguers. I mean, we'll argue about the sun being up in the sky right now. You're like a friend,
Really?
imagine that, right? So I allowed her the opportunity to have an opinion, right? Because
Nice.
sometimes my opinion is not always the be all and end all. She has to have an opinion. It's her life too. She's living her life, so she has an opinion, respectfully, but she has an opinion, right? So I think that is something that I have done differently, and I like it because she's a child who is very informed. She likes history. She likes current affairs. She reads up about a lot of different things. So sometimes she would challenge you, and she'll be like, Mom, that's not what you just said is not right,
Yeah.
because of this, that, or the other, the third, or the fourth. And I'd, consider it and be like, you're correct. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. So
It,
she
it,
comes, she
it,
challenges
it's a
me in a respect.
Gemini.
Yeah, that's the Gemini. She challenges me in a respectful way. And I like that. I like to have these types of conversations. We have very deep discussions about all kinds of things that are happening in life, whether it's the current political environment, of which she's very opinionated, and very knowledgeable, a lot more knowledgeable than I am, because I kind of have my head
Mm-hmm.
stuck down in the sand, but she's out there with the information and updates me on things. So I think, empowering her to have an opinion and being able, not being afraid to share it with me,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, one of the biggest things that I've done. That's
Yeah.
different.
That's
No,
so
that's all.
important. It's that stepping away from a child should stay in a child's place, which is
Right.
what we grew up
Yeah,
hearing. So that
Hmm.
yeah.
is such a critical thing that you're doing, and it is so it's needed. It's needed,
Hmm.
it's necessary because it also ties into their mental health.
Yes,
Knowing
exactly.
that they're able to voice their opinion. They have a
Hmm.
voice. I am somebody, I can let you know how I feel
Yeah,
about what
Hmm.
is
Mm.
going on without you telling me, oh, shut your mouth, this has nothing to do with you. That is
exactly.
that is critical. That is
Yes.
critical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she
And
will
we,
tell me that. She will say, what you said just now hurt me. So,
Yeah, good.
I'm big enough
So
to
important.
apologize
yeah,
for
yeah.
things
Hmm.
like that. So,
Yeah. And I think that's the iteration we're talking about, right? The way we were raised and kind of how you take the next step and become flexible. I think that's what Karina was
Hmm.
talking about initially, right? Like you
mhm,
had to
yeah.
bring about some flexibility. So ladies, thank you so much for sharing your insight, for sharing, your perspective, sharing your stories with us. Hopefully this was not hopefully, I know it's beneficial to someone. And I really appreciate you. So thank you for joining us on another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. See you next time.